I feel sharp, cramping pain in my abdomen. Oof. Hearing those words, or worse, actually saying them, it's an immediate, powerful signal that something inside is very, very wrong. For a doctor, that's not just a complaint, it's the starting gun for a race against the clock.
So, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most intense moments in all of medicine. We'll follow the trail of a really common but super dangerous medical emergency to see exactly how doctors use data, their own experience, and a core philosophy to make decisions that literally save lives.
All right, so that intense pain we kick things off with, what's actually causing it? Well, our story starts with a serious problem, a sudden blockage deep inside the body. What we're dealing with here is called a small bowel obstruction, or SBO for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a complete shutdown on a major highway inside your digestive system. The small intestine is blocked, and suddenly nothing, food, fluids, gas, can get through. And as you can imagine, that becomes a huge problem, fast. Now, one of the first things doctors have to do is figure out if this is a small bowel obstruction or its cousin, the large bowel obstruction. They might sound similar, but they're worlds apart. SBOs are way more common, and they're the ones that usually cause that sudden, violent cramping and vomiting that brought our patient in.
So what's causing this internal traffic jam? Well, most of the time, it's a physical thing, a real barrier. The number one cause, believe it or not, is adhesions. That's just a fancy word for scar tissue, usually left over from a surgery someone had years ago. But it could also be things like hernias, tumors, or this wild condition called intussusception, where the intestine literally folds into itself.
Okay, so the diagnosis is in. It's an SBO. And just like that, the patient and the entire medical team are standing at a huge fork in the road. A decision has to be made, and it has to be made right now.
And get this, for about 30% of patients who get admitted to the hospital with a small bowel obstruction, the only way out is surgery. That means for nearly 1 in 3 people, just waiting and watching won't cut it. An operation is absolutely necessary, and the stakes could not be higher.
When surgery is the answer, you're looking at 2 main paths. On one hand, you've got laparoscopy. That's the minimally invasive keyhole surgery that uses tiny little incisions in a camera. And on the other hand, you've got laparotomy, the traditional open surgery with one big incision. As you can guess, they have a totally different impact on how quickly a patient can recover.
So, this is it. This is the big question, right? For this person with this dangerous blockage, which pack do you take? How in the world does a surgeon choose? Well, it's not based on a gut feeling. It's based on a system.
And to really get how that system works, we've got to zoom out for a second. We have to pull away from our patient's bedside and look at the guiding philosophy behind pretty much all of modern medicine.
And that philosophy is called evidence-based medicine, or EBM. Honestly, the best way to picture it is like a 3-legged stool. The first leg is the absolute best scientific research available. The second leg is the doctor's own expertise and clinical judgment. And the third leg, and this is so important, is the patient's own values and what they want. For the best decision, you need all 3 legs to be perfectly balanced. And here's the wild part. While the name evidence-based medicine is actually pretty new, it was only coined back in 1991. The idea itself is ancient. We're talking about principles from the 11th century, or that famous trial in 1753 where a doctor proved citrus could cure scurvy in sailors. EBM is just the modern, organized version of that age-old hunt for proof.
Okay, so let's snap right back to our patient, waiting for that huge decision. The philosophy says to use the current best evidence. So what does the evidence actually say about picking between these 2 surgeries for a small bowel obstruction?
To figure that out, doctors do what a lot of us do when we need answers. They look it up. But instead of just a quick search, they dive into the medical literature, looking for top-notch research that's already wrestled with this exact same problem.
So, they might pull up a study like this one. Researchers wanted to answer one single question. For this specific problem, when is the minimally invasive surgery, the laparoscopy, most likely to work out?
To do that, they went back and looked at the charts of 227 adult patients who all had surgery for SBO. Now, that might not sound like a massive number, but in the world of medical research, that is a really solid group. It's big enough to tell you something real. And here is the key thing they found. When the surgeons tried the minimally invasive approach, it was successful a little over half the time, 52.6%. But in the other cases, they actually had to switch, right in the middle of the operation, to the big open surgery. It was basically a coin flip. So what do you do with a 50-50 shot?
Well, the study's big conclusion was fascinating. They said because you can't really predict who's going to be in which group, it's probably worth considering the minimally invasive approach for everyone, at least give them a chance at the faster recovery. You see, this is the kind of hard data that a surgeon uses to guide their decision.
Now, while the surgical team is weighing all that evidence, there is a whole other evidence-based plan happening in real time, right at the patient's bedside. And this one is being run by the nursing team. This is the nursing playbook, and every single step is backed by evidence. First, they stop all food and drink to give the bowel a rest. Then they relieve all that dangerous internal pressure using a special tube. At the same time, they're pushing IV fluids to fix dehydration. And through it all, they are constantly monitoring every little change. It's a precision-guided plan to keep the patient stable.
And the whole point of this bedside care isn't just about making the patient feel a bit better. No, it's about buying time. It's about getting the patient's body stabilized, relieving the immediate danger, and creating the absolute best conditions for whatever the evidence says should happen next, whether that's more waiting or a trip to the OR.
So, we've walked through this one single, really intense medical event. But here's the thing. The principles we just saw in action, they apply to pretty much everything in modern medicine.
It always comes back to these three pillars. You've got the best research out there, like that coin flip study. You've got the surgeon's personal skill and gut instinct, knowing when to push forward or change course. And you have a real conversation with the patient about what they want. You see, this whole evidence-based process, it's not some secret language just for doctors. It's a framework for partnership. So the next time you're talking with your doctor, you can be a part of it. You can actually ask, so what does the evidence say? And know that you are speaking the language of modern medicine. And that changes everything.